people? Welcome back to the Classic Cinematic Movie Podcast. Takes you back to the iconic films of 20 years ago and sometimes 20 years plus. I'm your guy, Danger Neff. With me is my beautiful sister. Welcoming back to the show, Gwen Neff. How are you, sis?
Good, bro. How are you?
Fantastic. And we got some stuff to cover today. This is one of those days that I know Jay is kicking himself. I know he's probably pulling out the hair he doesn't have on his head because this was the day that we've kind of been looking forward to. What was the future going to be? What was going to happen? So before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about what my sis has going on and some of the stuff that she has going on. So we're going to promote a little bit of her for a second. Gwen, please let people know what you've got going on with Sensi.
So I'm coming up on my 1 year anniversary with Sensi at the end of the month. So right now we are, for tomorrow, for May 4th, we are doing a pre-sale of Star Wars items. We have a child warmer, which is a really big baby Yoda, and a child buddy. So if you want to reach out to me, you can definitely do that at gwenneff.sensi.us.
That's gwenneff.sensi, SCENTSY.US.
And we're also just having a lot of things coming out this year, including NFL warmers and NHL warmers for those people that like, sports as well as movies.
Very, very, very cool. Thank you so much for that. As always, you can find us beatnetworkonline.com, as well as you can check out our Facebook, our Instagram, as well as wherever you basically listen to podcasts, whether it's Amazon to Spotify to Apple Podcasts to iHeartRadio to Pandora. We have an app on Amazon. Please make sure you download that if you're a fan of the show. Our YouTube channel is up and popping right now, as well as the guys over at Cinema Rehab got some stuff kind of going on, as well as my boy Los. He's got some stuff going on over on the Noise. So that being said, done promoting, done all that. We're going to move forward, and we're going to cover the movie that we've decided to cover. And part of the reason why I picked my sister is because she had started rewatching this movie. She actually rewatched it a couple of times. So I'm interested to kind of see her take on this now. We're taking this back all the way back, almost 20 years exactly, May 4th, 2021, with the divisive Mummy Returns, the sequel to the 1999 film. Now, a couple of things before I get into the box office number. There was clearly a plan for this movie at a certain point, and that was there was a major draw to this movie, and it kind of made sense. The biggest draw to this movie is that this is the opening. This is the first movie that Rock the Dwayne Johnson had actually been casted in. That was a non-wrestling movie, and the hype was a little bit real. This would have been the first time a wrestler with the acting ability of The Rock, which, mind you, isn't the greatest, but with the acting ability of The Rock to really come in and really try to do some damage. The only other person I can think of that had a charming personality that could cover over a long period of time was obviously Hulk Hogan. And Hogan had his movies, obviously Mr. Mom, Suburban Commando immediately comes to mind. Rocky III, obviously, as Thunder Lips. And like I said, there was definitely a lot of things that could have been there, should have been there. But this was a real change into how the next 20 years of films will go. Because The Rock is the number one most bankable action star out there currently. There isn't anybody bigger than him right now when it comes to action movies. Whether you like his acting or not, you're typically going to see his performance. And generally speaking, he does fine. You can't really say he hams in a performance. He does fine. You usually kind of like what he does. You're really there to see his biceps and that beautiful bald head of his. But there was a plan.
And that smile.
And that smile. And that smile. And the eyebrows. And everything. There was a plan for this movie. For Rock to have a prominent role in here. And somewhere along the lines, They
Got
decided to
lost.
go a very, very, very different direction. So before we get into that, let's get into some box office numbers. This movie dropped May 4th, 2001. Shares opening weekend only with one other movie, and that movie is called Pavilion of Women. Never heard of it. Have you? Yes, you have heard of it?
Mm-mm.
No, I didn't think so. Had a budget of 98 million with a box office total of 435 million, currently holding a 47% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and a 63% from fans. Gwen, is that fair?
Yes. Actually, for the first time ever, I'm gonna say yes.
Fair enough.
I I've been on this show 4 or 5 times already, and
Something like that.
normally I disagree. Normally I disagree with the critics and the Rotten Tomatoes. I normally am like, no, it's got to be higher. And I tell the critics, "F you," "F you" or whatever.
Critics.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But to be honest, this movie, I mean, I think it was just for kicks and giggles.
Definitely. So
It was that.
when the first time Gwen and I watched this movie was in theaters. Now, Gwen and I obviously lived overseas for a number of years, but this was a different experience for us because we were on vacation in Spain.
We were moving back to the States.
When did we leave to go back to the States?
We left Italy
Because I had to finish out the school year.
Yeah, we left in June of 2001.
Right. So I think this movie was still playing in theaters at the time.
It was.
Because we were moving back to the United States at this point. So here I am, bug-eyed, 13 years old, and we knew the movie The Mummy because we had seen the movie The Mummy over in Italy at the time, at that theater, that stupid theater. The movie was completely in Spanish. And I can tell you right now, we loved the movie walking out of that theater. And we were telling mom and dad, this is a great movie. You should really, really check out this movie. But there was a reason why for that. Because the dialogue that they were using was dialogue we were familiar with because they were basically pulling lines from the first film. They were pulling the same jokes, and it was still getting the same laughs out of us, from us, which that's a little bit more naive of us a little bit, but it was really hitting on those notes for us. And I think we really found a way to kind of enjoy that. Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, to me, anytime we've watched a film in a different, like when we watched a film in Spain or something and it's gone to the Spanish theater, I mean, I have a tendency to read their lips because I'd rather, read them in English and I say the dialogue to myself in my head.
Right. I'm usually the same way also. I'm like, okay, that's what I'm saying. Because it obviously doesn't match.
Yeah, because it doesn't match. So, I mean, the first time we saw it, we saw it in Spain. We saw it in Spanish. And I really liked it. I mean, I was a big Fraser fan at the time. I wasn't too keen on The Rock because I wasn't into wrestling and stuff. I mean, now I'll go watch a Rock movie at the drop of a hat because I love The Rock. So,
okay. And this movie kind of had a lot going for it. First and foremost, it brought back all of the cast. I mean, Fraser's back, Weiss is back, John Hannah as a brother is back, Arnold Vosloo, the bad guy from the first one, is back. The incredible Oded Fehr, he is fantastic. He's fantastic in these movies. And then, of course, bringing in Dwayne Johnson to kind of really get into this. It seemed like a no-brainer.
And the kind of thing is that they had Dwayne Johnson as top billing.
They did. And we're going to get into that. because this movie kicks off previously just like it did in the first one, taking us back to, about 5,000 years ago in the year 3067 BC, where the Scorpion King, played by The Rock, as he comes charging now, and all he's doing is screaming in this opening scene and speaking ancient Egyptian. In fact, that's all The Rock speaks in this is ancient Egyptian. So his first movie role ever for top billing, and he doesn't even speak English in this thing, and they don't have subtitles for ancient Egyptian. So you're just kind of assuming of what's going on as he kind of begins to lead this army for to conquer the world. And this opening scene, he's like kicking ass. He's kind of doing whatever. You know, he's demolishing the team. The very next scene, they show that the team that his army was defeated 7 years later, and it's like, what? Like,
what a loser!
That's not what you were showing. You were showing them kicking ass. You were showing them getting ready to sack the city. So what happened? But they never really go into that. So, with the army defeated and exiled to the desert of Amshir, The Rock and his men begin to die off from heat exhaustion until The Rock is alone by himself, and he decides to pray to the god of Anubis, god of the dead, to say, "If you give me an army, if you give me an army, I will give you my soul for the power to defeat my enemies." Anubis accepts this. An oasis is magically formed around him. An oasis and really a pyramid is magically formed around him. And the Scorpion King is given a legion of jackal-like creature warriors, right? Which are basically representation of Anubis himself. And they demolish all of Egypt. Totally completely. Once their task is done, though, Anubis decides to claim the Scorpion King's soul, and the army returns to the underworld. This, of course, told over narration from Odette Fair. Fast forward 5,000 years later to 1933, where we get the silhouette and picture of our hero, Rick O'Connell, as they are, well, what you kind of expected them to kind of be doing in this life, which is they're tomb hunting, they're grave digging, they're going out and trying to collect treasures. But there's kind of a problem I have with this. And so I'm going to let you defend. So we're going to kind of do this in a weird way. Gwen's going to defend this movie, and I'm going to attack this movie. All right. And the reason why we're doing that, similar to how we do in Cinema Rehab, is because this movie is divisive. I know plenty of people that really like this movie. I'm one of those people that I kind of fall on the other side, where it's like, if the movie is on, I'll probably watch it. But one of the things that they kind of mention is that Evie had a dream, right, that led her into this tomb. Gwen, defend
that. Okay, so with the dream, sorry, I've got something digging in my back. I apologize. Ow. Sorry, Joey. I apologize. With the dream that Evie has, we find out that she is a descendant of Nefertiti.
Right. Which is explained about
halfway through.
It's a little bit more than halfway.
More than halfway through the movie.
It's closer to 2/3 of the movie through. But
more than two-thirds of the movie, we find out that she's a descendant of Nefertiti. And we find out that someone from her past, from movie 1, Anaxunamun, was actually her father's fiance.
Right. Which there's stuff I want to talk about that, but I'm gonna wait till
hold on
later.
Let me defend.
Okay.
So I mean, when you're talking about movies, when you're talking about a movie like The Mummy, where you have ancient ancient Egypt involved, you are going to have that after, you're going to have that afterworld conversation on top of the reincarnation. Did you come in as somebody? Did you come back as somebody else? Did you come as, please don't do those faces because you make me laugh. So you're going to have that. With this film, you do get a lot of that. Did we necessarily need that? No, I really did not need to know that Evie was descendant of Nefertiti.
Right. So my attack is very simple. There's one thing with this movie that I just never understood. They did two things with it. One, they gave you a lot of action sequences, and that's a good thing. It's good to kind of have an action movie have action sequences. Did it need this much? Yes and no. But hold on, let me finish. But the other thing that they did is they gave a lot of exposition. Like, it gave you, this was kind of how the movie was. It was, you're either getting an action sequence or you're getting an exposition sequence, which is, okay, well, the action sequence isn't going to reveal much to the exposition because we really want a cool action sequence. But the exposition sequence isn't going to pace along this movie faster. It's just going to have this exposition kind of come through. So it's kind of that way. And here's what I mean by that. We get the introduction to Alex, the child, afterwards. And normally when a child is introduced into a movie, the quality of the movie drops. I'm going to say this about Alex. I liked him at the end of the day. It was kind of nice to kind of see, an offspring be there and that offspring to kind of matter a little bit. But at the same token, he has a subplot in this movie that makes no sense whatsoever. It's a MacGuffin sequence that has to help drive the story along, and it's just kind of whatever. So as we continue on, you're kind of they're exploring this tomb. She keeps having these visions, and she figures out how to unlock the wall, to do thingy, and they find this incredible looking bracelet that has a scorpion on it. And they see an emblem that reflects that it's supposed to be the Scorpion King, and he was supposed to be a myth. They're all myths. They're all legends. They're all something like that. It's never just a guy you heard of, right? It's not like, oh man, I'm in, the tomb of Attila the Hun. Like it's always some guy, right? So in the process, they kind of steal this box, and Alex is told to kind of kick rocks, and he kind of hangs out in the back, where a whole bunch of bandits come in who literally are just playing what the Americans are in the first movie. And the bandits come in, and they're kind of searching for stuff to happen when Alex begins to kind of play tricks on them until the bandits catch up to their plan, and decides to threaten Alex's life, where he winds up knocking over a whole bunch of columns. Meanwhile, Rick and Evie have set off a trap by grabbing said treasure chest that is literally having them drown from the Nile above. But because of the columns being knocked all around, similar to how the library books were in the first one, it knocks a hole in there, and Alex saves mom and dad. Okay, that's not too bad. I like small callbacks like that. Then we get the scene into they're back in London, and they're trying to figure out stuff. And here is where one of my problems is with this movie. Rick and Evelyn are wonderful lovers. They're almost on the level of Gomez and Morticia Adams. But they do not pay attention to Alex at all. Alex is 8 years old, a little bundle of energy, and can apparently read ancient Egyptian. So
he's just as smart as his mom. Give him a break.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm really okay with them being incredibly smart.
I mean, your niece is 11, and
but let's. I don't want to share that information. Okay. but with Alex, he's incredibly smart, and with his tomfoolery ways, decides to put this bracelet on. The bracelet immediately locks into place. Meanwhile, him rummaging through the crap, Evie and Rick just don't care whatsoever. Like, I'm pretty sure Rick did not know his name until a later scene in the movie. And they kind of, do this weird little thing until Alex is attempted to be captured. But instead, they wind up capturing Evie because, of course, the bandits from before have tried to get them have tried to capture them. So it's
hold on. You just skipped a whole section of the movie right there before they get to London. Because right before they get to London is when they dig up the creature.
And I was going to get into that.
Okay, they dig up the creature, and then after we see the scene from London, and then back in London.
There's a scene from the bad guy's perspective where they decide to dig up the creature being known as Emotep. And resurrect him with the Book of the Dead, very very quickly actually, the Book of the Living. Excuse me. The Book of the Dead is the one that brought him back because the Book of the Living kills him. And it was so weird because again, it's not really explained, but it's now assuming now that apparently Evie is sharing dreams with this candidate for Noxunamun. How they came to be where they were kind of descendants in the first place, I don't know. But whatever, right? I'm gonna kind of let that one be. We get the scene in London, and in the process, we get the reintroduction of Jonathan, obviously played by John Hannah, and Jonathan is still Jonathan. 10 years later, Jonathan is the exact same person he was leaving the Mummy. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if that's a bad thing. But if there's one thing this movie really lacks is character development. You don't actually learn anything new about Rick and Evie outside of stuff that their ancestors did.
They were married. I mean, they met on the Mummy, and now they're married with kid.
But married couples still evolve.
But I mean, I don't think Steven Summers was trying. Steven Summers is not known for character development. I mean, here's the thing.
True. He did the first Mummy. Here's the thing. I learned a lot about Rick.
Right. Here's the thing. You brought up a point before where you said that this movie had both action and exposition. And you get the action scene and then the exposition scene. And then that you had a lot of action. You have to think about that the year this movie came out was that period of let's say 96 on forward, where you had to have that one major blockbuster action movie. Okay. And that blockbuster action movie, it was, I mean, you got Independence Day, you got The Mummy, you had Mission Impossible, you had that. You were talking about that this movie was considered the start of the summer season for the movies. And anytime,
yes and no.
Hold on, let me finish. Anytime that you kick off the summer movie session, the summer movie season, barring COVID.
Get in camera scene.
Sorry.
I can't see you.
Sorry. Barring COVID, you always have what they would consider a major blockbuster film.
But that's been going. So first and foremost, that's been going on since the 80s. That's not a 96 thing. That's been going on. 1993, we had Jurassic Park, which was an action sci-fi movie, right?
But you had Lethal
Weapon in 1991. You had Goodfellas. You had So the idea of having the problem is the problem that I have with that is if we're going to suddenly just say, well, it's an action movie. Action movie isn't supposed to have character development. I immediately point to Terminator 2. Terminator 2 is considered the best action movie of all time. Has some of the best sequences. Doesn't heavily rely on CGI. It mainly in some scenes it doesn't really do so well, but it doesn't rely so heavily on CGI. Instead, it forces you to really enjoy the character development. It gave the question of how to restore humanity to a machine. So for this movie, first of all, the movie kind of has a character development thing about it already. You already did so well developing the character of Evie and Rick. I didn't need a whole lot, maybe, but I needed a little bit more. Like, for example, what was let me ask you this, because he does play a major role in this film. What is the backstory of Adewate Akinwumi Agadabe, also known as Lochna? He's just a henchman.
He's just a henchman.
He's just a henchman that has a problem with Oded Fair, which, by the way, makes an appearance during the London sequence. What's the backstory? What's the backstory on the priest, other than the fact that he's a curator at the British Museum? Why did he decide to go bad? What was the whole reason why he was there? That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying that I need everybody's backstory, but at least to know, I need to know like what's the plan. Let me ask this: what is the bad guy's plan once the mummy is resurrected? What is Anck-su-namun's plan?
Make him fall in love with her so they can bring the rise of the Anubis army.
And once they succeed, then what?
Then she goes off and does her own thing and breaks up with.
That's my problem here. Like, my problem is, but it's under the control of Imhotep. It wouldn't be under control of her. So she breaks up with him. She's going to die. What I'm saying is that it's just kind of a weird plan to really want to bring back the mummy, other than bring back the mummy. Now, if they said that they were all cultists, like everybody is a cultist, and we really, really believe that Imhotep is a living god, which is pretty fair. I mean, he does have supernatural powers coming back from the dead. Then that's kind of a different ballgame, because then you're resigning yourself to the idea of being something else. So I don't know. There's just, this isn't the kind of movie that needs to get super philosophical, but man, I felt like with the mummy, like it at least had enough story for it to move forward a little bit.
But then at the same time, like you're saying, character, lack of character development. I think we did see a little bit of character development with Imhotep, because
we already knew Imhotep's story.
Well, we knew some of Imhotep's story, but we didn't know, but to me, like,
what's some of the stuff that we learned about Imhotep?
Well, first of all, one of the things is that, to me, Anck-su-namun in the first movie is the untouchable woman. You could not touch, she was the untouchable woman.
Sure.
Okay. And
that happens to be the bodyguard.
Right. She was the and after she dies, after she, throws herself because she says, "You're the only one that can resurrect me," or whatever, you could actually truly see that Imhotep did love her. And then later on in this movie, you're actually we'll get to that part. You do see a little bit more of character development on him. That you can see, okay, well, dude, this guy was actually super sensitive.
So, and the reason why I say this is because we're already a decent portion of the way into this movie, and we're kind of in a different place, because immediately after the London sequence inside the house, we get the rescuing of Evelyn, which, I guess the mummy is able to resurrect his guards once again. Of course, none of the bullets hit Rick or Evelyn in the process as she gets rescued. And it's super easy, barely an inconvenience, as I'm going to steal from Screen Rant there, where nobody's able to hit anything, nobody's able to do anything. You have the main priest is kind of asking whatever, and they bring back the skeletons from the first one. Okay, fine. And they kind of have this cool sequence where Rick technically only kills 3 of the 4 mummies. The fourth one, I guess, Stephen Summers literally says afterwards, I think everybody's tired of him fighting mummies at that point. And decides to just not do anything with him whatsoever. Where they have this kind of really cool scene from on the double-decker bus with Alex having the bracelet on his wrist. And, everybody's kind of happy-go-lucky. Once they finish that sequence, I'm not really going to get into it. It's a cool sequence. Go check it out. Alex is kidnapped again. Why? Because Rick and Evelyn are horrible parents and they're not paying attention to their son whatsoever. So he gets kidnapped again.
God, call CPS, David. Call CPS.
They didn't exist in 1933. So once Rick finally figures out his son's name, Alex, and decides to, chase him up a bridge that's, escalating up, they say, okay, well, we need to figure out exactly where they're going. All right, well, they know that they're going to Sheer, and so they decide that they basically need a better idea of kind of where to go, right? And they're forced to travel to kind of travel to Egypt in the process. And as they begin to kind of pursue them, they bring in another character named Izzy, who is whatever. He doesn't really move the needle for me. Does he move the needle for you?
No.
Same here. Where they kind of take this balloon all the way across for transportation. Why? Because it's super sneaky. Because you can't hear a balloon in the air. You can hear a plane, but you can't hear a balloon in the air. Okay, fine. So they kind of get the sequence of, and this is again just really weird, where they have to get to Karnak in the process, and when they hit Karnak, the train is there to arrive. The train is there to arrive first. By the way, the 3 bandits from the beginning make a reappearance. Saying that they found something. That they found this chest that has these idols in there, and of course they're tricked and get their life sucked away. And so now Imhotep is now completely restored, which at that point in the first movie happened about 3/4 of the way through, because it was believed that he would have been too powerful, maybe 2/3 of the way through, because it would have been believed that he was too powerful at that point. But now here we are, halfway through the movie, and his powers are completely restored. He also finds a way to fall in love with the Noxuna Moon in the process as well, giving her body and her spirit, which that was at the end of the movie. And so now this is just kind of like, okay, well, there's nothing that we can do about this. So at that point, what was the point of getting the Scorpion King?
Well, to kill him so that he could be
the army of Anubis, right?
To take over, to be in charge of the army of Anubis.
But he's immortal now. he's back to being immortal. Like, he's fully immortal and has his girl. So why isn't he brought the 10 plagues when everything happened? Why isn't he doing that shit all over again? That's what I'm saying. It's a little weird. That's like, we're so focused on the Scorpion King thing for no reason whatsoever. So, of course, and I'm going to kind of skip ahead here. Of course, they find a way to figure out how to get to Umshir. Oded Fair has a falcon that's been kind of relaying to this army, but of course, the falcon gets shot and killed at the very end of this thing. And you get, as what Gwen said, this kind of final vision before they get to Amshir, where yes, it is shown that Evie, I guess, is a descendant of Nefertiti. It's kind of weird. And then this new girl is a descendant to Noxonomun and is now Noxonomun reincarnated, having her soul ripped out of her, which is weird as well. And it just kind of, it just kind of leaves a bit of a weird taste in your mouth, don't you think?
I mean, it does. I mean, to me, I mean, in the original Mummy, it is referenced that it, um, Rick asks Evie, when Evie got drunk, and says, "Your brother, I get. You, I don't get." And she says, my mother was Egyptian, my father was British, and my mother was Egyptian. So I guess you can see that, okay, well, you can see where the descendancy came from on
Sure.
the mother's side. To me, that storyline, I really truly did not need it. I did not need to know that she was a descendant of Nefertiti and that her and Anoxinamun did not like each other in a past life.
I agree. The other thing, and I got to kind of crack up a little bit, how awkward is it for Imhotep? That's like, hey, babe, I just reincarnated you. Totally forgot that I was trying to hook up with your sister last time I was reincarnated. My bad, because Nefertiti.
She's not her sister. She's not her sister.
Absolutely, were
they were not sisters.
Fine. Then I was trying to hook up with your rival this whole time. My bad, dude. My bad. But we're cool, right? We're cool.
Yeah. Noxonomun is kind of like Noxonomun was like the pharaoh's concubine.
Sure. I'll go with that. So they reach this oasis. And this movie relies so heavily on CGI. There's a scene where they kind of do this water cannon thing. And I got to say, it's very lackluster compared to the sandstorm face. And how many faces need to be in clouds in this thing, by the way? Like, that's just kind of weird. So they finally they crash the balloon or the didgeridoo, and Izzy decides to stay behind in hopes of repairing it with hot air instead of gas. And so at nightfall, the O'Connells decide to infiltrate this cult, but they're attacked by pygmy mummies. Okay, fine. These mummies come out, and I gotta be honest, they're fun. All right. They're like these little pygmies. They're almost monkey-like. They're coming in. They're basically stabbing everybody. They're kind of pulling people down as if they're velociraptors. As people are sinking into quicksand, one of them is going really slow and kind of jumping across here and there, here and there, here and there. Right. So it's fun. They eventually get to the pyramid at dawn, and the bracelet detaches from Alex. And that's the one storyline I could have done without. There was no point in the whole bracelet thing at all whatsoever.
I mean, Alex used the bracelet to guide them to where they were going.
But that doesn't matter. Imhotep's a priest. He could have magicked his way to know exactly the location of this thing, right?
So if you're going to do that, let's just say, okay, hypothetically, let's just say instead of Alex having the bracelet on, and if it was Evie, would you have been okay with Evie having the bracelet on and her being the guy?
I think the bracelet's dumb in general. I think the bracelet literally adds nothing into there. It's this unneeded. It doesn't add anything to the story. It's literally my cut that out. My cut that out is the entire storyline with the bracelet itself. Because it literally could have been that Imhotep, being the evil dick he is and feels like taking revenge on Rick and Evie, is going to use the child as a sacrifice to the Scorpion King. Is a perfectly good example of that. It would have raised the dick level on Imhotep that much more, and they would have had to figure out a way to track them afterwards, right? And then Alex could have literally been, this is where we last stopped at. Could have literally been all that. no problem. And it still would have followed the same storyline. But the bracelet thing, whatever, detaches. And as they're kind of relaxing, Anoxonamun arrives and kills Evelyn. And I got to say, it feels like it's supposed to be an emotional part. It isn't.
I mean,
because in the trailer, they literally show them fighting afterwards.
Right, but you see, okay, hold on a second. Hold on. You see, I mean, the minute that Anoxonamun stabs Evelyn, I mean, you completely see Rick's heartbreak, and it turns into a revenge. He turns into revengeful Rick.
Yeah, sure.
He was ready to kill. He was ready to kill. Kill Imhotep and kill the Scorpion King
by leaving his son behind with the irresponsible brother. Yes.
Yeah, and then Jonathan decides.
I know this is a tough moment for you, child, but I'm going to kill those who killed your mom, and then we'll grieve together. It actually makes sense. It's the 1930s, so he probably would have been a bad dad anyway. Yeah. Go on.
So then, of course, you have the whole finding the book of the dead. No, the book of the living.
No, the book of the dead to bring back the living. The book of
book of the dead to bring back the living, and they bring back Evie. What I find it hilarious is that Alex had the same problem with the same animal that Jonathan did, flying Menefis.
Right. It's a nice callback.
And it's a nice callback. And, waking Evie up, and then doing the whole thing with waking Evie up, and then Anoxonamun and Evie just like going after each other. I was like, girl fight.
Yeah. And credit to that fight, because that was actually them really fighting there. That was all their fight scenes that they had. There were no stunt doubles. That was them literally fighting here, as they were trained for 5 months to fight each other. So inside the pyramid, the same high priest, curator, has decided to put on the bracelet and revives the army of Anubis, right? Because he's able to kind of take back whatever was there. All right. Anubis takes Imhotep's powers.
Oh, where'd you go?
I don't know. What did you do? You need your video back on. There you go.
Sorry.
So Anubis takes Imhotep's powers, wanting Imhotep to fight as a mortal. And Imhotep, of course, Rick finds Imhotep summoning the Scorpion King and decides to fight him. And I'll say this. It's really cool to finally see Rick fight Imhotep, because in the first one, Imhotep has all his powers. So Rick doesn't stand a chance. And he's more fighting Imhotep's powers more than he's actually fighting Imhotep. So just to kind of see them brawl, go, hand to hand, and just kind of kick the shit out of each other is a good part of the movie. I actually like this part of the movie. And then we get the wonderful introduction to the Scorpion King. People, when I tell you this is the absolute worst CGI I've ever seen, it's god awful. They decide to bring out The Rock, who again hasn't really done much up to this point. Is just now here at the end of the movie in a scorpion-like body with his arms scorpion-like. And was it bad? It's computer animated. It's completely digital. It makes no sense whatsoever. Why did
high school? It's high school level CGI.
Here's a problem with it. If somebody is to ask me, was this good CGI? I would need to remind people that in 2001, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, released 7 months after this movie. And it is a drastic improvement to this movie. No, it is awful. It is shit. It is something that you would literally see. It is barely better than a PowerPoint presentation. And I think I'm giving that a little bit too much credit. It's so bad that the movie Virtuosity, who I really did not care for the CGI in that movie, I think has a puncher's chance to beat it. That's how bad the CGI is. And considering this movie had a $98 million budget, you have to question, why did you blow your CGI budget on everything else but this fight? Why? Why wasn't there more practical effects? Why wasn't there, So it felt like so much of this movie, they wanted to showcase the CGI so much and put that money forward to the CGI that they basically forgot about character development in the process. And while they gave a story technically and a script that borrows a lot of elements from the first one, the CGI is so hit or miss with this thing that it really kind of ruins this thing. Anyways, Scorpion King comes out. Scorpion King starts kicking ass and this is the only reason why you should learn another language, apparently, as Imhotep decides to say, I'm your servant in ancient Egyptian. And of course, Rick, in the last 10 years, hasn't quite figured out how to speak ancient Egyptian, of course. And so now he's basically getting double teamed by the both of them. So as they begin to fight, Baltus, which is that high curator I was talking about, comes in with his, melted arm at this point. And the Scorpion King just decides to kill him, I guess, just a straight up kill him. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Alex decide to steal the Book of the Dead from Nox and the Moon and basically use it to resurrect Evie. And okay, this is probably the one scene with John Hannah that I really enjoyed because he gets the crap kicked out of him by a chick. But the one time he lands a good punch on her, he is super proud of himself. He's like, oh, I think I got this now. Alex, of course, is able to resurrect Evie after the help from the uncle, of course. Who Evie then confronts a Nox in the Moon, and they kind of have a pretty good scrap, actually. Also, during this process, Jonathan has kind of figured out, and this is what I always found hilarious. This scene actually cracks me up because, there was some dickhead, cultist. Because again, this is a pyramid, right? This is a pyramid that's supposed to be for the Scorpion King. So I want to know the dickhead cultist who decided to do this, because he literally drew, not in hieroglyphics, but in literally picture by picture design what to do. He's like, are you a magi? Do you have this spear? Do you have this staff? This staff opens up to a spear. If you throw said spear to Scorpion King, and then literally has a depiction of the Rock in the wall over there with the stupid claws in there with the spear through him, as if that's the thing that can kill him. So they've been carrying around this MacGuffin stick this whole time that's going to kill the Scorpion King. And so you get this hilarious scene of of basically Rick is trying to explain that the stick is really a spear. It turns into a spear.
And the thing is that you actually got the Easter egg of the spear at the end of Mummy.
Right, of course. So
you got that little Easter egg because when they're loading the bags of gold up on the camels,
you see it in there. Right.
So the fact that Jonathan being Jonathan,
Exactly.
has to be has to be treated like a kindergartner.
It's very on character, I'll say that. So the Magi seem to defeat Anubis' army, but realize, of course, it was only temporary, as the full army decides to appear and charge towards them. And there's millions at this point charging at them, and they look petrified. Rick gets the scepter from Jonathan and kills the Scorpion King in kind of a hilarious sequence, because it's kind of a delayed reaction from Imhotep, because he stabs him and you get this pause as the Scorpion King is over Rick, and Rick looks like he's about to fall, but of course he has a spear inside the Scorpion King. And then here comes Imhotep, kneels down and is all like, no! Like, okay, where did you come from? Why weren't you helping him? So, and Rick killing him send him and his army back into the underworld, which causes the Oasis to begin to destroy itself. Meanwhile, Evie and Anox and the Moon have now shown up as the pyramid is literally as it's literally destroying itself. Rick and Imhotep are thrown back and hang over a pit that basically leads to the underworld, as you're seeing all these souls of people trying to pull them inside, and kind of a creepy visual. Evelyn decides to risk her life to save Rick, but Anox and the Moon, being the bitch she is, abandons Imhotep. And Imhotep, who chooses to let go and fall into the pit as he sees Rick and Evelyn look over, as Imhotep is completely heartbroken. And that's good acting by Vosloo. I'm not gonna lie. Like
that was heartbreaking, because in a sense you can really look at The Mummy and The Mummy Returns as a love story.
In a sense. All the dude wanted to do was rule the world, kill everybody in it, and be in love with Anox and the Moon. So when the girl rejects him for that, all you have is killing everyone in it and destroying the world. And is that really something to live for at that point? So he decides to throw himself into the underworld. While trying to escape, of course, Anox and the Moon falls into a pit of scorpions, or really scares, but I think it's scorpions, and dies. And the O'Connells reach the top of the pyramid, where Izzy has arrived with a modified didgeridoo and rescues the O'Connells just before the Oasis and the pyramid are totally destroyed.
Don't forget the magic. Don't forget the diamond.
Of course. In the process, Jonathan, being Jonathan, sees this huge, beautiful diamond right above the pyramid, and tells him to lower himself, and is able to grab the diamond, and they escape and get out of there. As they depart into the sunset, Ardith Bay salutes them before riding off with his Magi. And that, people, this is The Mummy Returns. It's flawed, I think, is the best way that I could kind of say it. The first one is definitely a lot better. This is still one of those movies that, look, if you're looking for something that's just going to have action sequences and you really don't care if the story makes sense, or you really don't care about learning more about the characters, it's the movie for you. Because the action sequences, I'm going to say, are actually kind of top-notch. There's definitely a lot of explosions. There's definitely a lot of gunfire slinging back and forth. You get kind of good moments from everybody. The one complaint I kind of have when it comes to the acting is Rachel Weisz really did not care towards the end of this film. And you can clearly see that she did not care towards the end of this film, because she was hamming it in at that point. Whereas Brendan Fraser, who's always been kind of a limited actor, was trying to give a great performance. But that being said, let's get into some takeaways. Gwen, who's getting that guy award?
Oh, of course, my boyfriend, Brendan Fraser.
Okay, go ahead.
Rick O'Connell.
Who is getting that chick award?
Evie.
Any reason?
I've always liked Evie's character. I always liked her feistiness and everything. I do agree that towards the end of the movie, you could tell that she really didn't care anymore. However, I mean, she still brought that Evie fire.
Sure.
At the beginning and at the middle of the movie, and her fight scenes were awesome. So
very cool. The Fool Award.
Jonathan.
Why?
To me, Jonathan's always going to be the fool, the funny. He's going to be the comedic sidekick, and I just, to me, it's always good. To me, that's who Jonathan is.
Okay. Cut that out.
Oh, cut that out. Oh, I would definitely cut out the whole Nefertiti, Anox and the Moon
backstory.
I didn't need that.
Okay. Does it hold up?
20 years later?
Yes.
No, it doesn't hold up. first of all, like you said, the CGI sucked. I mean, it's not, I think this movie, if it was released today, you would just straight see it in one of the streaming services.
I think so too. And iconic scene. Does this really have an iconic scene?
I mean, to me, one of the iconic, an iconic scene for me is the waterfall fight when Emotep eats up the balloon.
Okay.
I think that's, I think when you think of the Mummy, or of the Mummy movies, you always think of the sand face or the water face. So I think that would be an iconic scene.
All right. My That Guy award. There's part of me that wants to give it to Emotep because I think Vosloo is underrated. Since you took Brendan Fraser, I'm not going to take Brendan because I think he gives a perfectly fine performance. I'm going to give it to Oded Fair because you really felt like this could have led to a spinoff for Oded Fair and never went that way. But Oded Fair is actually kind of wonderful in these movies. He's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to kind of watch. He brings us a real Arabic charm to this that I'm sure every woman out there was like, man, if all Arabic men were like this, it'd be pretty easy to fall in love with them. That being said, he does drive the story along and he does kind of show a sense of duty. So there's that. My That Chick award, I'll give it to Evie. For basically the points that you kind of pointed out. It's easy to like Rachel Weisz. I wish that she would have cared towards the end of this film, but I could really tell that she was just exhausted at this point, didn't really care for what happened afterwards. A lot of that, I think, is script. And I think that might have led to a little bit to the reason why she didn't show up for number 3. I know she says part of that is the production, because it would have required you to stay in China for 5 months. But I felt like with a good amount of money, she could have gone anyway. But whatever, it was her choice. And but her as Evie is always going to be remarkable. It's definitely one of the more fun performances for a female character. It's one of my favorite female characters. That's kind of where I'm at with it. That full award, I'm gonna give it to the curator. Like, what are you doing? I felt like he knew nothing in this. Like, I literally felt like he knew nothing except what was already given to him, and I felt like he got that from the girl. So it's like, what are you an expert on? Why are you able to lead all these men? Why do the men care to protect you? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't know. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Cut that out. The entire storyline with the bracelet. I know that seems dumb, but I felt like the bracelet was just. I felt like the bracelet literally added nothing to the story. Outside of saying, "Here's where we're going to go next. Here's where we're going to go next." I never felt like Alex was ever in danger of dying. If they actually showed him dying in the process, and we had like a pet cemetery crisis going on instead, okay, that changes the landscape of this movie. But this movie was never going to go that route. The movie was more interested in doing the Nefertiti thing than really kind of developing Alex in that case. Does the movie hold up? Absolutely not. This is a movie that if you don't ever feel like watching this, I don't blame you. It's definitely one of those that you kind of have to be in the mood for action sequences and mummies to really want to see that. And I feel like that's a pretty specific criteria for you to see. Or it could very well be action sequences and Brendan Fraser, and okay, that's a little bit more broad of a criteria there, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. An iconic scene, I hate to say it, but it's got to be the fucking Rock. Like, it's got to be that stupid CGI Rock
with the eyebrow.
because it's not necessarily that it's this movie this movie teased a lot of promise and didn't. That scene would have just been so much better if The Rock literally just came out and fought as him as a person and try to fight Brendan Fraser. And then it'd be a literally 2-on-1 Vosloo, Rock versus Fraser. And The Rock could have had superhuman strength and powers and whatnot, but Fraser kind of figures it out anyway, right? And he can only be killed by the MacGuffin spear. Fine, whatever, right? But I almost feel like the movie would have been so much better if it was just that and have The Rock just play a bad guy like that. Instead, like, this movie technically led to a spinoff with the Scorpion King, except in that one, he's a good guy. So, I don't know.
And that's the kind of the thing that kind of throws you off with this movie, because with the spinoff, with them doing the spinoff, and God help you, there's been like 3 other Scorpion King movies. Don't ask me how I know that.
Oh, I mean, it's no secret per se.
Yeah,
I mean,
because Dad
Kelly
watches them because they come on at 2:00 in the morning. Because they come on at 2:00 in the morning. And
there's literally been like 5 sequels to the Scorpion King.
So to me, it's just been very. I mean, do we look at the Scorpion King as the anti-hero?
Could be, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. I honestly would have preferred Rock to show up and just straight up fight. I don't care if he does wrestling moves. I literally am okay with that. But this Scorpion amalgamation thing where he just looks like shit, man, it just about killed The Rock's career at that point.
It did, and kind of like, because when they did interview him, I remember watching the interview on Entertainment Tonight when they introduced him, to being on the Scorpion King. Everybody was so looking forward to it, and then you go watch the movie and you're like, where'd he go?
Yeah. What exactly is he doing?
Why are you giving him top billing in a film when he's only in the film for less than 10 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. So, he doesn't even speak English in the film.
Exactly.
Which, okay.
And, talking about character exposition, one thing that kind of bugged me is how did Rick, because there was this scene between Oded Fair and Rick when with the tattoo about the Magi
tattoo, right?
The Magi tattoo, and Rick's like, "Well, I was in an orphanage." Again,
that could have been a character development plot. That's what I'm talking about.
I was like, well, hold on a second, because you're very Americanized. You're very Americanized. How did you end up in an Egyptian orphanage?
I don't know. That probably would have been a really good character plot.
Right. So
it probably would have been a necessary 3 minutes.
So that was like, I was like sitting there and I was like, huh. And that was me watching the movie today. And I was like, hold up a second. Let me back up. So yeah. But yeah, in regards to The Rock, it was just very disappointing. Give him top billing and he's only in it for 10 minutes. But then that kind of reminds me of that movie with Steven Seagal and Kurt Russell, Executive. They gave Steven Seagal top billing and he dies within the first 10 minutes of the movie.
15. It was 15. All right. Let's get into some quick hits. I'm going to wrap this thing up real quick. Rachel Weisz and Patricia Velasquez trained for 5 months for their fight scene. They did the fight without any stunt women. Good for you guys. That's the kind of dedication I'd like to see in films. Loosely translated, Dwayne Johnson's line, Hakuba Chinte, means it's hot as hell. Freddie Both, who plays Alex, I thought this was really cool, was a big fan of The Mummy, having seen it over 30 times. He actually passed on the opportunity to play in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which would also come out in 2001, to participate in this movie because The Mummy is one of his favorite films. He knows so much about the movie, he even served as sort of a consultant of the first film for this film for the other crew and cast members. He knows every line and detail of the movie. When anyone on the set of The Mummy Returns needed to know something about the first movie, they asked him, and this was his first professional acting job. So kudos to you, dude. That's kind of awesome. Brendan Fraser tore a spinal disc, cracked a rib, and injured his knees during production. Dwayne Johnson suffered from food poisoning and sunstroke, and he lost over 10 pounds and said it was the worst I have ever felt in my life. For the 10 minutes he was in this. I want you to keep that in mind. The much criticized digital effects of The Scorpion King were rushed as they were only completed 8 days before the film's release.
That's why they stopped.
Yeah, that's a big reason. According to Arnold Vosloo, the axe he swung around weighed about 50 pounds. After 3 days, he felt his arms were coming out of their sockets. That's bad. Ardeth Bay, Odette Fair, is the only person in the film who refers to Imhotep as the creature. That is explained in a novelization of the film, which states that Ardeth, as do all Magi, fears even referring to Imhotep by name while the mummy is still in his undead form, calling him "he that shall not be named." Wink, wink, Harry Potter. Ardeth Bay in the novel overcomes his unease and reluctantly refers to Imhotep by name after the mummy's regeneration. Let's see. And I will do one more. No, I'm good. I think this is good. Yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That's what I got for you today. I want to thank my big sis Gwen Neff for coming out. Make sure you guys check out her Sensi account. Where can they find that Sensi account?
GwenNeff.sensi.us.
That's Gwen Neff, Neff.sensi, SCENTSY.US. Make sure you check it out. Pre-order and order whatever you want. My sister gets money from that, and she kind of needs it to buy a house. So please make sure you go out of your way, order something, hit her up, and we'll get into that. As for myself, Gwen, did you want to promote your Facebook or Instagram or anything like that?
I do have my Facebook, which is Gwen Neff, and Instagram at Gwen Neff. And you guys do see me once in a while on the Back to the Classics page, making my little comments.
That's right. So as for myself, you can catch me on the co-host here, Back to the Classics, David Danger Neff. My guy, Jay Alonzo, is currently on vacation. He will be for the next 3 weeks. Actually, correction, he will actually be back for one particular movie that we're going to be having come up here in a couple of weeks. So please make sure you go check that out. Anything Beat Network, go check out beatnetworkonline.com, as well as you can click on whatever links that we have in our descriptions to go check out our videos. Wherever you decide to listen to podcasts at, you can definitely find us there. If you feel like joining the Facebook group, Back to the Classics is a movie talk group. We're up on Facebook and we're up and popping. So make sure you go check us out from there. Said it, did it. That is good. I have already recorded next week's episode, so I'm actually kind of taking like a 1 week break, which is fine though, because I'm really okay pre-recording episodes. I will likely I'm going to try to record another feature episode, because at the end of this month I will actually be going to Boston. No, I'm not going there for fan bases. I'm just going out there to go see a buddy of mine. So we will be back. I will be back next week. I have a special guest on. Next week, and we will go ahead and talk about that. Once again, big shout out to my sis Gwen Neff. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you guys all next week. Peace out.
Peace out.